If you dig into the 1930s films of Gene Autry and Roy Rogers, they're just so lighthearted. There's a chase scene, the bad guys being chased or the good guys chasing the bad guy, whatnot. And all of a sudden they break out into a musical song. I just find that really endearing as well. It's basically taking out realism and adding fantasy.
From the Autry Museum, located on Tongva Homelands in Los Angeles, California, join us in asking, what is a Western? Today our guests are the Farmer and Adele, Farmer Keenan and Grace Adele, coming in from Nashville, Tennessee, singing Cowboy and Cowgirl. And we're so delighted to have you on the show today.
Yep. Thank you so much for having us. We're so excited to be here.
Yeah, mighty proud to be here. Great big Western howdy.
Mm-hmm.
It's great to see you. So just to start off, could you just give us a description of what your musical act and performing act is, the Farmer and Adele, your style, your history of how you came to be, and how do you describe yourselves?
Sure. We're the Farmer and Adele, and we're a cowboy, cowgirl, Western swing band out of Nashville, Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And we sing music from the 1930s to the 1940s in that style. And we also love to incorporate our own original material to add to the genre. And we got started by having a love for bluegrass music, jazz, classic country music, and a love for folk music. And then when we discovered the Riders in the Sky, and we discovered the Time Jumpers here in Nashville, Tennessee, and realized that you could mix all of those genres together in what's called Western swing and cowboy and cowgirl music, singing cowboy and cowgirl music. Mm-hmm. So we just were floored that this music existed. We really got involved with it and started learning a lot of songs. And then we took a trip out west and
into the wide open sky.
That's right. And a big road trip, and drove through New Mexico, drove all the way out to
California.
Mm-hmm.
And up and down the coast, and then head back east to Tennessee, where we're located still today.
And the sights were just amazing and inspiring. And so we just had a whole lot of songs to start writing. And it just kind of organically happened. Mm-hmm. And we became the Farmer and Adele.
Mm-hmm. Welcome to the Satellite Ranch.
I love your ranch. So what does it mean to be playing this kind of music in 2020? What engages you about the singing cowboy genre?
We feel like we're tending to an old flame that's almost going away, but still adding to it as well. As Grace Adele mentioned, we're writing a lot of our own music in this style. And that has been a very easy process for us. That has never been anything like that we were trying hard to do or anything. We just naturally were writing these songs and just having so much fun. And we also have a lot of singles out now in that style of our original songs. Our recent single is Singing on the Silver Sage Tonight, and that is sold wherever good music is sold today online. And, well, we got into the style. It's so much fun. Through a lot of the Gene Autry and Roy Rogers Westerns, the films are just so carefree and non-cynical and just a good time. They're really quirky as well. If you dig into the 1930s films of Gene Autry and Roy Rogers, they're just so lighthearted. And all of a sudden there's a chase scene, and you see the camera dangling over the screen as well from the top, and there's the bad guys being chased or the good guys chasing the bad guy, whatnot, and all of a sudden they break out into a musical song. And I just find that really endearing as well. It's basically taking out realism and adding fantasy into the film. Some of my favorite old Gene Autry pictures are The Big Show, which actually featured the Sons of the Pioneers as well in that film, and a young Roy Rogers. Right before he became Roy Rogers, he was still Leonard Sly. He would not have a film career for another 2 years until I think after that movie was made.
Yeah, and I think making this type of music in 2020, through our experience and watching the films and finding the bands from the 30s and the 40s, we've really had so much fun discovering this type of music. So when we go and play a show or a concert, our hope is that others will also find that same joy that we've found with, it's a
with the
diamond
discovery.
yeah, with the discovery of it.
Absolutely. As Grace was saying, a lot of these old Gene Autry and Roy Rogers films, especially the Gene Autry Western films, they feature a lot of regional bands of that era from the 1930s, such as Al Clauser, or Cindy Walker even made an appearance, who is a wonderful, wonderful songwriter, very big, heavy hitter in the songwriting world of country music, early country music, and even up to Ray Charles doing country music in the 1960s. And Al Clauser and his Oklahoma Cowboys, and the Jimmy Wakely trio, these groups might not have otherwise made it onto film in that era, but thanks to the Western, they actually were able to capture these films in their performances. And we now, today in 2020, get to see the nuances of their performance on film. It's pretty amazing. There's a lot of country music groups that did not make it onto film. We know what they sound like through recording, but we would not have known like their nuances of how they maybe performed to have that connection with them through video.
Do you find yourself inspired by some of their styles of performance when you see that, in terms of taking on little, I don't know, quirks or styles?
Absolutely. There's a certain style of guitar playing. One of the things that I was absolutely attracted to was the sock rhythm style of the guitar.
Chop, 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 chop.
It's basically kind of the snare drum. There weren't a lot of drums in this music in the 30s and the 40s, and the guitar was the percussive part of the music. And so we definitely listened to that.
And Grace plays that style today, the sock rhythm style.
And I discovered it through these recordings and through movies, because you can actually see some of the chord shapes they might be playing. And then when we discovered the Riders in the Sky, Ranger Doug was one of the only people living that I knew who played this style. And everything else before meeting Ranger Doug was actually looking through film and looking and listening to this type of music.
And Ranger Doug has been a huge asset to the Farmer and Adele in that, getting to become friends with him, he was able to play with the people that played that sock rhythm style, such as Wesley Tuttle, and he was able to actually ask questions back in the 1970s, in the early 1970s, when the Country Music Hall of Fame was on an oral tradition mission and doing a lot of audio recordings of interviews. And then Doug on the side would be like, hey, what's that chord you were playing, and he'd bring his guitar. And so these guys were showing him, like, this is what we were doing. Doug, to us, is that pivotal connection between the 30s and 40s to 2020.
And we've been able to have a friendship with him, and we've been writing songs with him. We've written over 20 songs with him, and the last time we were there writing, we were writing a Christmas song. He and it was a beautiful sunny day out on the porch. But he mentioned a story that Cindy Walker actually pitched him a song at one point in time and gave him a cassette tape of some of her songs. So there's that connection of, to us, we've only been able to know of Cindy Walker, or know of Johnny Bond, or
through recordings and whatever's out there on YouTube. But Doug is, again, as Grace was saying, he's that connection. It's amazing to have that.
For viewers, the Riders in the Sky have been going for a few decades, since the 1970s, as kind of historians and also a wonderful performing act, tending this flame, as you say, and it's wonderful that they're kind of, collaborating with you to kind of bring it to a new generation.
Right. And there is a difference between, as Grace mentioned, we've been heavily influenced by local groups here in Nashville, Tennessee, such as the Time Jumpers and the Riders in the Sky. But other than those two groups, there's nobody in Nashville doing that style at all. And the difference between those two groups and us is the Time Jumpers is more playing this Texas, very heavy on the Texas Western swing, which is more, a great example would be George Strait. And the Riders in the Sky, they're still coming from the generation, since their demographic is a crowd that comes out to their shows are 60 and older. They're playing to the demographic who remembers Roy Rogers' TV show on television growing up. And so their jokes and inside humor, which is very tongue-in-cheek, is very relatable to their crowd. Where our crowd that's coming out to see us perform, they're experiencing this for the very first time ever. And they like it, and they're always like, wow, this is really cool. I've never seen this before. And that's really worked out for us in the sense that it's introducing them to something that maybe it starts a conversation. And also it's so different, there's so with that difference, we've been able to be this band that gets invited to almost any event out there, such as a bluegrass and folk music festival, to anything like Pilgrimage Music Festival and events at the Country Music Hall of Fame, to children's music festivals as well.
And sort of in the spirit of Ranger Doug and he's a historian as well as a performer. Could you give us a little bit of a history lesson? Nashville is not in the West exactly. So how did this Western music change Nashville? In what ways did it kind of enter Nashville and transform things there?
It changed Nashville dramatically. To give a little bit of a history lesson of WSM and the Grand Ole Opry, WSM 650 AM is one of the oldest running radio stations in America. That's still around, and it started in the 1920s, and it would play a lot of music such as orchestral music and popular music of that era. But then all of a sudden they realized they had a niche with playing old-time fiddle music. We call it old-time fiddle and banjo music here, and that music has a way of relating to maybe more rural folks, and so WSM started the Grand Ole Opry with that in mind, to appeal to try to basically sell insurance to rural country folks in the surrounding area. From the late 20s all the way up till probably the late 1940s was very much overalls for the men, with maybe a straw hat on, and the flower sack dresses for the women. The women all being like, howdy, it's this very
hayseed.
Hayseed, very rural. Now, here comes Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys from out west. He had already been featured in Western films, such as Gene Autry, or maybe not a Gene Autry one specifically. It might have been a Charles Starrett film. But he was already in Hollywood, and he was down in Texas, and they were wearing these clothes, wearing scarf ties, sometimes wearing the Western suit, really nice Stetson, cowboy boots. There's a great book out there called Southwest Shuffle, and there was a great interview with Minnie Pearl, who was one of the country comedians on the Grand Ole Opry for many years. In her interview, she remembers the first time Bob Wills played the Grand Ole Opry, and that they basically got to the Grand Ole Opry, stepping off the bus, looking very Western in their attire right away, right onto the Opry stage, and the Opry management said, remember, Bob, no drums. And he said, okay. And right when the Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys were about to go on, the Bob Wills just, leaned over to his band members, hey, when they announce their name, each one of you carry a part of the drum set, and we'll just go out there, because by the time they announce our name and we're out there and we already have drums, they can't do anything about it. And so he got drums on the Grand Ole Opry stage. And I mean, this blew people away in 1948, 49. I mean, Johnny Cash performed at the Grand Ole Opry. He did a lot of percussive sound on his guitar to give that effect, but he didn't have drums. Not yet. So, I mean, this is a dramatic effect of Western music creeping into the Southeast and creeping into the Midwest and adding that steel guitar electric sound, and all of a sudden the electric guitar sound as well.
That's an amazing history to learn. And some of your performances, as you mentioned, are for children and family audiences. And I know a lot of those films, the Singing Cowboy, Singing Cowgirl films, were also, a lot of their audiences were children. What is it about this genre that works so well for family audiences?
Oh, well, when we were discovering this type of music in the films, we also definitely saw that correlation that there were a lot of productions that were geared towards children. And when performing live, we perform for everyone. But we definitely noticed that children were coming up to the front. And we definitely noticed that this type of music, it has a backbeat to it. And so children start to jump and dance. And so, right away, and families, you could just feel the actual room change when you're playing this type of music. It's very fun, it's joyful, it's lighthearted. And so we recognized that, and with the correlation of the films of Gene Autry and Roy Rogers, and they would have these fan clubs for little boys and girls. And so recognizing that, we kind of decided we wanted to make our own branch of music. And another way to really introduce this style to children, so we created Saddle Up with the Farmer and Adele, which is focusing on where our food comes from, and focusing on, just learning and loving and sharing, and then incorporating learning through music. And so we'll put in a little bit of, stylistic chords or stylistic songs that are in this genre of music. And we just think it really relates well to children. And it's been very inspiring to play for children and to play for families, because you get a feeling that they're open to share this fun, and they're open to share the joy of this music. The kind of cynical guard is checked at the door, and so it makes a little bit more of an uplifting vehicle for learning. And we've been very honored to be a part of some organizations, Sing Me a Story and Musicians on Call, which we've been going to hospitals when we were able to. And we'll
pre-COVID, of course.
Yeah, we'll start that back up soon. And playing for children. And Sing Me a Story is a phenomenal organization where they pair you up with a child who is in the hospital or someone who's going through an ailment, and they pair the artist up with the child, and the child writes a story, and then the musicians collaborate and write a song with the story. It's just been an honor to be able to use music, and to be able to use the things that we're passionate about and that we love to reach children. And the other thing that I noticed, and Farmer Keenan and I noticed with film and the Cowboys and the Cowgirls of the 30s and the 40s, is they would give back to communities, and they would give back to children.
Yeah, it's definitely been an inspirational point for us with going into the history, as Grace was saying, into the Westerns and the stars behind it at the time. I mean, they were very connected with their audience. They weren't separate. They were together. And I mean, there's a story I remember reading. Gene Autry took his publicist wanted to go with him to a children's hospital to go perform, and the publicist just said, like, halfway through the performance, he had to actually go outside. He was just crying. I mean, it really hurt for him to see all of that. And he confronted Gene afterward and just said, how do you do this? And Gene just simply replied, "It's my job. It's my job to bring joy into the world." And that's definitely what we feel is speaks to us as well. And another part of the West that we really like are the cowboy codes of the West, but we like to call it the cowpoke codes of the West, to speak to all everybody out there as well. And some of our favorite cowboy codes, cowpoke codes of the West are not all things are for sale.
No, they're not.
And a cowboy is free from religious and prejudice and tolerance. I mean, these are really wonderful, deep ethical thoughts. I mean, in my opinion, I think they go a little bit deeper than obviously a cowboy or a western. You know, these are pretty amazing ethical things that you're teaching children.
And the Cowboy Code of the West was introduced in a lot of the films for children in the 1930s and the 40s and the 50s, and so there's just so much out there of the Cowboy Codes of the West that they just all still ring true today, and we've also been trying to add a little bit of our own codes within there that we see fit for modern times.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I've been thrilled to learn some of those similar things, both about the Cowboy Code since I've been working at the Autry, and also learning about how Gene, and I know other performers too, would just tirelessly visit hospitals, visit children in hospital. It's phenomenal, and sign autographs for hours, and just it is really inspiring. So thank you for attending that, Flame.
Oh,
it's a pleasure. It's
important to us, and it's an honor. I mean, it's something.
It's a treat. This is
what
we get to do.
That's what I was gonna say.
So where does this fit into the Nashville of today? I think there's a lot of different sub-genres. There's rock music in Nashville. There's all different types of country music. Where do you all kind of fit in, or where do you have intersections maybe with some of those different kind of parts of the scene, so to speak, in Nashville?
The great thing about what we do is nobody's doing it. And our steel player jokes, and sometimes the bad thing about what we do is nobody's doing it. And
No.
but we like to look at the positive, and we are so lucky and fortunate that we get invited to so many different events. There's so much genre specification out there, like rock music or country music or punk or whatnot, or bluegrass even, and folk, and people drawing that barrier in line. And the great thing about cowboy, cowgirl, western swing is no one, again, because we're the only ones doing it, no one knows really what to do with us, but they like it, and we get invited to all of these different events as well. And it's neat to see how it brings a smile upon everybody's face. We've performed at very serious singer-songwriter Americana events, and the performers going out are really playing these heartfelt songs that are more based on narrative, and our music is more based on the sound, the joy, and the vibe that we're putting out there. And they always like to put us on first, I've noticed. Have you ever noticed that, Grace Adele? They put us on first, I think, to kind of maybe lighten the mood, maybe.
Well, and in Nashville, as you said, there's so many genres now. It's really opened up to rock, to we see a lot of outlaw music, honky-tonk music.
And Jack White being here as well. You should tell them the Jack White story of when he came out and saw us perform.
Right. We do a whole part and a song where we get everybody to howl, and
like coyotes.
Come on, everybody, howl. Oh, that's right. And so we were at a show, and we were getting the audience to howl that night. And for whatever reason, that night the audience just, they just weren't ready. And so The wonderful thing is that Jack White was in the audience, and he came right up to the front of the stage and started just howling and howling. And you know what? The whole room all of a sudden started to howl.
and lighten up and laugh.
Yeah.
It was great. Jack White comes strolling in with his entourage, and we're the only ones howling on stage, and all of a sudden he does it, and everyone lightened up a little bit more after that. It was great.
Yeah, so we fit in everywhere, which is wonderful. In Nashville, there is a lot more, and I think just in music in general today, there is a lot more drama and serious. So much music that is serious today that.
That we're trying to take care of that problem.
We are. And so, it's something we've had to get used to, of catching people off guard. It's a beautiful thing to be on stage and kind of, you're sharing this experience with an audience, and you're watching them and feeling their presence. And, in the beginning, they might have their arms folded, and they might kind of be, what is this? They might be kind of figuring out, why are there cowboys and cowgirls?
A lot of people all of a sudden are heading to the bar.
Why is he yodeling? Yeah, there's all kinds of things within our show. But, within a couple songs, it's just an amazing feeling to feel the entire room change and smiles to kind of start happening. And you really feel the room lighten up. And so we feel like
And they sing along, too.
Yeah, and they start singing along. But we truly are currently the only ones doing what we do here in Nashville. We are starting to see... We're starting to see some people integrate a Western swing song in their set.
Which they might be coming more from, like, the punk country background, or there were some... And a lot of... It's funny... Some more musicians that I talked to, one of our good friends, Billy McLaren, he's a wonderful fiddle player here. He grew up playing Western swing down in Texas, and he let us know that Casey Musgraves, because he grew up hanging out at all these Western festivals with her, he was like, did you know that Casey Musgraves is actually quite an amazing yodeler? And I actually had no idea that Casey Musgraves yodeled.
No, and I really think that
so it's in there.
These films from the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the music, the Western swing music, and singing cowboy and singing cowgirl music, I think that it's a tradition that's it's rooted in us. It's rooted in our culture. It's something that is familiar but just has been forgotten. And so we're very excited to be bringing it forward.
And in the immortal words of our friend Sanborn McGraw, what little boy or little girl at one time didn't want to be a cowboy or a cowgirl?
Well said, Farmer Keenan.
Thank you, Grace Adele.
Well
Thank
said.
you.
Well, on that note, would you be so kind as to play a song for us?
Well, we'd love to.
Yep.
Before ending with a beautiful song, I just want to thank you again for joining our conversation about what is a Western at the Autry Museum. And we look forward to seeing you in person someday here in Los Angeles.
Oh, we can't wait to go visit the Autry Museum. It's definitely on our bucket list.
My gosh.
We haven't been there yet, but we can't wait.
We're so excited to visit. Mm-hmm. And thank you so much for including us in What is a Western.
Mm-hmm. And we can't wait to read your book, Josh, on what is a Western.
Mm-hmm.
There is no clear answer as far as I've learned yet, but we're still looking. So it's just over the next horizon. All right.
That's right. We're still looking too, and that's the great thing. There's so much to discover. It's endless.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much, and I look forward to this song.
Yep.
Ready,
Grace Adele? Let's go grab our instruments.
Yep. Welcome to Saddle Up Ranch.
We're the Farmer and Adele, and we're here to play you our #1 hit single, the Saddle Up song. Here we go. 1, 2, buckle my boots. Yeah.
Saddle up behind me. We could go trotting along. Saddle up behind gone.
Long gone.
Out of sight. Together as we gaze at the stars up above, we could keep on rolling steady, easy going, singing our saddle up song. Oh, hand in hand, together, we could go out on a stroll. Head 'em up, get moving. The night sky is ours to hold. Hold 'em high. You've stolen this one heart of mine.
Well, I could be your huckleberry.
I could be yours to marry, singing our saddle up song. Oh, go into the wide open sky, just you and I, singing our saddle up song. Saddle up, get cozy as we gaze at the stars up above. We could keep on rolling steady, easy going, singing our saddle up song.
Go and to the wide open sky, just you and I,
Singing our saddle up song, song, song.
Right now, from the southeast all the way to the southwest, you can hear those tumbling tumbleweeds rolling all the way from Nashville, Tennessee to Los Angeles, California, asking the philosophical question, what is a Western?
What is a Western?
What is a Western? And if you listen in real closely, you can even hear sounds of coyotes off in the distance. And if you listen in real closely, you can also hear ducks off in the distance as well. And chickens. And let's get back to those coyotes off in the distance. 2, 3, play.
Saddle up, get cozy as we gaze at the stars up above. We could keep on rolling steady, easy going, singing our saddle up song. Oh, we could keep on rolling steady, easy going, singing our saddle up song. Yep, yep, yep.
A mighty big Western thank you to the Gene Autry Museum for having the Farmer and Adele here today. Yahoo!
Yep, 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 yep.
The Autry Museum of the American West thanks our members and supporters.